Hey, what's up, guys? What is this? Bombing Nazi Germany. The graphic history of the Allied air campaign that defeated Hitler in World War II. Wayne Van Zandt, I'm a big fan of Wayne Van Zandt's work. Mostly he's been doing like this, well, for the last decade or so. He's been doing more like these historical graphic novels. They're not really stories, they're just kind of like, graphic novel documentaries of what happened with a real military kind of bent, kind of normie historian, but history, but the normie version, but not particularly. There was a lot of the more dry information that was more illuminating back then that isn't mentioned a lot now, but still quality things. Of course, why am I going over this on February 13th? Uh, anyway, just of course the usual. Right, Van Zant's work is great. I mean, the detail. Excuse me. The detail of all the technical weapons. The people. Right. Always liked his. His art style. So it reminds me, like I said, of Sam Glansman. Right? It reminds me of Truman. Sort of that American style of art that really didn't really do superhero comics, right? So we go here. We start, of course. It's interesting here, the Battle of Britain, right, and of course the Blitz, and then I like how they go. The raids on London actually began when a German bombardier accidentally dropped his bombs on the city. Accidentally, was he not supposed to? Oh, so that you when you see this, you're like, oh, we're gonna get revenge. Okay. Uh, yeah, look up May 11th, 1940. That's all I'm gonna say. I'm not even gonna say what happened on it. I'm just saying look up May 11th, 1940. So, and from that time to finally in September, 4 months later, the Germans actually start to bomb London. Okay. Of course, the whole thing with the British, right? I remember my grandfather telling me the British would bomb at night, and the Americans would bomb them in the daytime. Right? Of course, you had the different techniques. Of course, you have Butcher Harris, Arthur Harris, who actually, him and even Curtis LeMay, right? I don't. The way I look at things now, I still don't have animosity for these men. Okay, these men were given a job to do by higher ups who helped bring these events into play. Let's say, right? And he did what he did. Look up the name Lindemann. And of course, they tactics. Right? They knew flying at night, right? But you could fly at night. Obviously, it was safer. The Battle of Britain and the Battle of Britain didn't work out too well for the Germans, especially in the daytime bombing attacks. Okay, the Blitz was more successful. Bombing at night, it's hard to see. So, of course, in terms of the tactics, how are you gonna do when you can't hit anything? The answer is simple and brutal. If you could not kill a factory worker at a factory, you could bomb him where he lived. If you killed innocent neighbors at the same time, that was just an inconvenience. Lord Cherwell backed up Harris in this assessment. He concluded that most people were more affected by the loss of their homes than the death of a friend or a relative. He figured that most of Germany's 22 million people lived in 58 cities. If Bomber Command could dehouse a third of the German population, that would break the spirit of the people. Yeah, I could get a job with Mark Felton now, right? Fucking, of course, they dropped incendiary bombs. That was the solution, okay? Because you just drop the bombs where you see the initial bombs, where the stuff is lit up. You just keep bombing that area. Okay, you can see it at night, and of course you get the like the size comparison. So the war comes on, right? The assault on Köln, right? How did they do? They did some damage, but they lost 40 planes in the raid. Okay, of course they anticipated that they would have lost more than. Of course, the German didn't have night fighting capabilities as well as this point, but they're starting to get them. Okay, they're gonna get really good at them in just a year or so from necessity, right? So it was sort of a mixed, you know, mission. But now the Americans were gonna come in. Hey, we're coming into the war, right? They had other days. They were gonna fight the day. Like, hey, what's up, you? Hey, limeys, we're gonna fight the daytime, Mac. Yeah, we got bigger guns, bigger planes. Yeah, we got precision bombing. We're gonna do it in the daytime, right? Because both the Germans and British have experienced. They know that daytime bombing is very difficult. Well, the Americans go at it with all their machine guns. What was that documentary? My friend had mentioned it. Where they talked to one of the gunners. It's like, wow, those machine guns, you probably felt safe. He's like, we couldn't hit shit, right? Yeah, so of course the airstrip one, right? Go to the pub meet. But then in combat, it's very difficult to hit to hit enemy planes. They're too fast, even with all these machine guns. And you start to see also, remember, 50% of all the bombers shot down from the British or the Americans were done by flak. Flak accounted for a good 50% of the losses, and what did it do? Also, it did something else. It made them miss their targets. And also, you have like the Germans started doing stuff like this. They would attack these bombers head on, right? Where like almost none of the machine guns were pointed forward except for the dude on top, right? And they would go on head on. It was like just playing chicken. So these Americans, don't look so happy now, okay? Because they're losing a lot of guys. These are some of the more educated dudes of Americans, and you're having them suffer a lot of losses, of course. What was it? The 25, the magic number. 25 and home, which then would get extended to 28. But anyway. Oh, the sexism. Oh. Anyway, so now you start to see, right? The daytime bombing is playing havoc on it. Okay? The British are kind of laughing at them, although they didn't do too great either, with their dam busters. Of course, a little hint of things to come, right? The Germans' radar is developing, and the British are dropping strips of aluminum foil that would screw up the radar. So now in Hamburg, right, Germany's second largest city, you actually had incendiary bombs. They created a wind, 150 mile per hour kind of tornado of fire, right? Firestorm to purify, right? Firestorm destroyed half of Hamburg's buildings and killed estimated 50,000 people. And you're gonna see this later. All right, I know I got cut off there, so sabotage. But the war is continuing, right? Right. Twin engine firing. Wow, yeah. Oof. But you're getting all the Schweinfurt raids, like the first raid, the second raid. Eventually, they lose like 60 bombers, and the Americans stop their bombing campaign. Okay, they had to stop because they got their asses kicked. And the British are starting to suffer at night. The German radar and the night fighters are really developing well. The Uhl, right? The Henkel E219, the Uhl, the owl, right? Now becomes a deadly night fighter. Yeah. So the Germans are making them pay. Of course, they're restructuring, and the numbers game is going to come into play. There's just no getting around it. Of course, now the whole idea is that when you need fighter escorts. When they finally got the fighters that could escort these bombers, they actually had I guess they didn't realize it, but they started to whittle down the Luftwaffe in air-to-air combat. Of course, the Luftwaffe is still vastly outnumbered. Your best guys can't go back to train. New guys are coming out as experienced. So attrition is wearing it's taking its toll. So I'm just trying to get right the flak towers. They still have these up, right? Enormous structures of steel. So very underrated flak. I keep saying I think I went over that. So, and the Americans are now dominating the skies. Hey, where you from, buddy? Baltimore? You got a smile on your face. Where you from? Detroit? Yeah, don't be smiling now. That's just my petty self. So excuse me. So now at this point, like I said, we're just going forward here. Germans are trying to develop, better, super weapons. I guess you say rocket. They got the Comet, right? Rocket powered attacks, to interceptors. Of course, the Me-262, right? The jet fighter. Like I said, in fighter combat, these things were nasty, but they had to slow down to attack the bombers. That's when they were vulnerable. They're still outnumbered. Okay? And then when they had to land, they were vulnerable. Right? Right. One of the guys, as he was landing, a swarm of Mustangs came on. Instead, a swarm. Right? Attacked him as he was trying to land, and that was it. So, and you can't get that guy back, but you got plenty of Americans to fill the gap. Fresh-faced boys. There's a show, like I said, there's a show now. I think about another show about the brave young, pretty boy, American bombers. Things that's yeah, I really want to see that. But I'm gonna get to that point of why I sound so petty now. Right? So now Germany is just it's right 45. They're just getting decimated now. The Russians are coming in from the should I say the Soviets? Hoorah! Yeah. Oh, cool Joseph Stalin tank. Like that tank. Why February 13th is tonight, right? What's that? May 11th, 1940, and of course February 13th, 1945, Dresden. And he gives a pretty good, even-handed account of Dresden. Of course, famous writer was successful with that. He's now not doing too well, but I'll just read this. Right. First phase of the Allies' 234 planes dropped their large bombs on the old town, blowing off roofs and shattering windows in preparation for the incendiary bombs to follow. 3 hours later, 538 planes arrived. Okay, it's over. The numbers, it's over. Right? Aiming their bombs at the fringe of the fire in the city center. Right, you use the initial fires. You know where to drop your bombs at night. Small fires merged. The center of the fire, stoked by the old wooden buildings built hundreds of years before, increased in temperature, sucking oxygen into the center of the flames. Right. As it had done in Hamburg 2 years prior, a firestorm swept through Dresden. Temperature on the ground rose to as high as 1,100 degrees Fahrenheit. And a flaming tornado tore the clothes off all the people outside the bomb shelters and then cremated them. Those in the shelters faced their own hell. The extreme heat on the ground pulled all the air from inside the shelter, suffocating those inside and then roasting them as if they were in an oven. Firefighters desperately tried to gain some sort of control over the fires, but the task was impossible. It was hell on earth. The next day was February 14th, both St. Valentine's Day and Ash Wednesday. Over 317 B-17s dropped their bombs, right? Because the sun comes up and now the Americans come, right? Drop their bombs into the city while everyone's still trying to fight the fires and dig people out and see what the hell is going on. Well, never mentioned in this graphic novel was also the Americans, the fighter pilots, when there was no planes to fight in the air. They were given orders to strafe whatever they wanted. So these people got strafed too. People strafing people on the road, cows, all kinds of stuff. Survivors, Hitler Youth, and American prisoners, right? Like Kurt Vonnegut. And another thing, Vonnegut, through the rubble to find entombed shelters that perhaps contain survivors. Remember in Slaughterhouse 5, right? The puddles of goo, right? And then they realized it was people, right? They placed dead bodies in pyres made from the railroad ties and burned them on the spot. How many died in the bombing of Dresden? Because of the huge influx of refugees, it is impossible to say for sure. But historians suspect it could be as high as 135,000. Now, of course, the official thing is, 20,000? They fight over the numbers, right? Because it's all a thing, right? Germany, mentioned this as a war crime during the war. There's only one real crime in war, right? It's losing the war. And it's to end this now, right? Did they destroy the German war industry? Well, actually, Speer kept the thing going to the end. Right? Did they destroy the German people's will to fight and bring them to their knees? No, right? They fought on until they were taken, right? You fucking bastards. I'm with you. Did they destroy the enemy's air force? Yes, they did. Right? So now, of course, you're thinking, good. What are you? You're some kind of Nazi? Nah, these people are my blood, my mother's family. My oldest aunt, my uncle were little kids. I remember getting bombed. Okay, I am biased. I am, because they're my blood. Okay, you want to make it a moral argument or justifications or all this shit? No, no, no. Don't care about that. They're my blood. They're my ancestors. So I care what happened to them. Right. I'm biased, just like everybody else. Good night.